you. Ms. Barsa.
Chairman Roby, Ranking Member Songas, members of the subcommittee, allow me to thank you for your consistent support for Afghan women and for inviting me here to testify today on the issue of recruitment and retention of women in the Afghan National Security Forces. I work with an organization called Inclusive Security that's dedicated to increasing the inclusion of women in peace and security processes. We've been in Afghanistan for over a decade, and I travel to the country frequently. Informing this testimony are consultations I've led with men and women in the Afghan National Security Forces, officials of the Afghan Ministries of Interior and Defense, and representatives of ISAF, among others. Let me start by acknowledging that the gains Afghan women have made since 2001 are many. But as U.S. and coalition forces draw down, progress is beginning to erode. As we consider how to maintain progress for women, we must evaluate women's direct participation in the Afghan institutions mandated to protect those gains. In total, the U.S. has appropriated about $52.8 billion to the Afghan Security Forces Fund for support of the Afghan National Forces. Prior to 2013, there had never been authorizing or appropriating language in law that specifically addressed recruitment and retention of women in those forces. The presence or absence of women in the ANSF has implications in the areas the U.S. has deemed top priorities, including but not limited to democracy promotion, countering terrorism, and providing security to the Afghan people. And I'll elaborate briefly on those 3 points. On the issue of democracy promotion, female security officers are required to staff the women-only voter registration and polling stations. In the absence of sufficient numbers of female security personnel, these voter registration and polling stations will remain closed. In other words, Afghan women will not be allowed to vote. On countering terrorism, last year in Afghanistan, you can trace at least 13 recorded accounts of male insurgents dressed as women infiltrating restricted areas from which they launched attacks. There were no female body searchers to stop them. Due to cultural norms, male security officers cannot conduct body searches of women, security checks of homes that have a female present, nor effectively gather information from or conduct interrogations of women. On the issue of providing security to the Afghan people, of course, understanding people to refer equally to men, women, boys, and girls, sexual and gender-based violence is endemic in Afghanistan, with as many as 87% of women experiencing some form of domestic abuse or forced marriage in their lifetime. In cases where women report these crimes to male police, they're often blamed for the abuse or, worse, abused by the officer. With female police officers, these crimes are more likely to be properly registered, investigated, and prosecuted. Of the myriad institutional and social impediments to recruitment and retention in the Afghan security forces, I'll highlight 6 of priority concern to women. First, the recruitment process. Women have reported recruitment officers turning them away, heckling them as bad women, and asking for sexual favors in exchange for enrollment. Second, assignment and rank promotion. Women have often report being assigned to positions below their ranks, including soldiers relegated to carrying out menial tasks such as cleaning the office or serving tea. Equipment and transportation is an issue. Women have reported not being assigned weapons, never receiving uniforms or being issued uniforms made for men, and having rare access to vehicles, which limits their ability to investigate crimes, respond to ongoing incidents, and conduct outreach to communities. There's the issue of sexual harassment. Complaints of sexual harassment, abuse, and coercion are widespread throughout the forces. The existing complaints response mechanism has proven ineffective in addressing abuse and holding perpetrators accountable. Then there's the public perceptions issue. While surveys do actually show that communities are increasingly supportive of policewomen, families are still reluctant to encourage or allow female members to serve. This is partially attributable to conservative cultural norms, but also to the rampant sexual harassment and assault within the forces and lack of female-only facilities, which lead to rumors of prostitution and un-Islamic behavior. Highlighting the point of inadequate facilities, as one example, 29 of the 30 police training centers do not have dormitories for women. Without appropriate facilities, women trainees need to travel home each night, which effectively limits enrollment to women in the immediate vicinity of the training center. The Afghan government has set ambitious targets for recruiting and retaining women in the forces, but we're not on track to meet them. This is in part attributable to the environment, but also to an under-resourced effort. We're grateful Congress has taken steps to address this. The 2013 NDAA emphasizes the importance of recruitment and retention of women in the forces. The House version of the 2014 NDAA, as well as the 2014 Defense Appropriations Bill, specifically authorize and appropriate respectively $47.3 million for this purpose. Efforts to support women in the Afghan forces will be sidelined if money is not explicitly reserved, which, to clarify, doesn't imply adding another line of effort to the train and assist mission mission to effectively integrate women into the forces, interventions designed to recruit and retain women must be integrated into current U.S. efforts under the existing funding categories. I want to stress the point that right now the focus needs to be on cultivating a safe environment for women within the forces, which can only be done by taking on the challenges outlined earlier. Additionally, financial resources must be complemented by human resources. Right now, we have gender advisors in place at ISAF HQ, ISAF Joint Command, and the NATO training mission. A number of these positions will be cut by the start of 2014, which will curtail our ability to meaningfully make progress toward goals set. Without question, Afghan women have experienced improvements in access to healthcare, education, economic opportunity, and political power since the fall of the Taliban in 2001. But it's important to remember they weren't handed progress. They fought for it. They established social service organizations, ran for political office, advocated to official actors, and did the impossible work of holding communities together in the midst of war. As we question how to maintain gains post-2014, our answers must include enabling women themselves to protect what they've fought so hard to achieve. We must acknowledge Afghan women's interest in serving their communities and their country, and for those who want to serve in the armed forces, it's our obligation to ensure they can. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr.